Hi, this is Anthony Arnove. I'm here with Dahr Jamail. Dahr, we're at the Winter Soldier hearings in Washington, D.C. What have been some of the highlights for you of attending this gathering?
It's really been profound for me, actually, to hear, after so many years reporting on Iraq from strictly the Iraqi side of the story of what the occupation has caused in their lives and what it's like living under U.S. occupation, to actually now hear the stories from the soldiers themselves about what they did. It's been a bit refreshing and a relief to actually hear straight from the soldiers, this is what we did, this is why we did it. So many of them apologizing to the Iraqi people.
I want to apologize to all the people in Iraq, and I'm sorry, and I hope this is going to be over as soon as possible.
And that until people hear about what is going on with this war, it will continue to happen and people will continue to die. I am sorry for the things that I did. I am no longer the monster that I once was.
It's been really moving, although quite hard to kind of hear these stories again. Very emotional, I think, for everybody here, and especially me and anyone else that's spent time over there and seen this stuff firsthand. It's been difficult, but at the same time, a relief to hear this.
One of the things that I was particularly struck by was the emphasis on how racism and dehumanization has gone hand in hand with the occupation. Is that something you experienced when you were in Iraq and in your own reporting? Is that something that you saw as central to the occupation?
Absolutely. I think the occupation couldn't occur without the dehumanization of the other, of Iraqis, and treating them, you know, we hear so many soldiers here talking about, yes, we from the beginning were calling them Hajis, Haji this, Haji that, Haji stores, Haji food, Haji CDs, and without really turning them from humans into just Hajis or ragheads or the other derogatory terms that we've heard soldiers speaking about, it'd be much more difficult and I think impossible to carry out atrocities against them. And to hear soldiers talk about from the very early days of training, and even some, especially the women, talking about the sexism and the things they encountered even while they were being recruited, that even within the military there's dehumanization of soldiers against other soldiers. And then hearing that really laid out well by Iraq veterans here and their experience with that, and then how that so easily translated into Iraq. Well, okay, well, here are these people, they're not Americans, they don't speak our language, they're a different religion, so it's that much easier then to dehumanize them, and therefore when they kill people at checkpoints or run over civilian cars and tanks and this kind of thing, that while they're dehumanized, they're not really human, so it doesn't really count.
So how do we square that, though, with this idea that we're liberating the people of Iraq, that they lived under tyranny, we're there to help them, we're there to rebuild their country. If we left the country, it would be chaos. How do people handle that contradiction between the reality of the occupation and this kind of dehumanization, this racism, and then this idea that we're freeing them, that we're liberating them, that George Bush said last week that we're there because we view that all human beings are made in God's image, that's why we're there.
Right, and this is where I think this event, the Iraq Veterans Against the War Winter Soldier, is so critical, because we have the soldiers themselves talking about, really, even there's been people on panels ridiculing what Bush said, and so different times, one soldier throwing his medals on the ground and saying, I will not be a tool of this administration anymore. Another one today tearing up a certificate he was given by General Petraeus. And this kind of thing where the soldiers themselves are so outraged by this propaganda and know all too well and are telling us and the public and the international world, this is what we did. We completely dehumanized them. This occupation had nothing to do with helping the Iraqis. It was clear to us the first weeks we got there what this was all about. No clear mission, just survival. Do whatever it takes to get out. And if that meant killing 100 Iraqi civilians, that's what we were going to do. And I mean, this is straight from the soldiers.
I oppose this war because I love America. I speak out against this war not in anger, but with a great sorrow in my heart. I speak out against this war because I'm disappointed with America. There can be no great disappointment where there is no great love.
The truth of the matter is that the war is the atrocity.
So I feel that if more people could hear this straight from the soldiers instead of being plugged into corporate media propaganda, Bush administration propaganda, that, oh, there's still some good the U.S. might actually do in Iraq, well, I would say just ask some of these soldiers.
You have a book, Beyond the Green Zone, which is based on your work as an unembedded reporter in Iraq. And you just mentioned the mainstream media, the corporate media, the established media, how poorly they've covered Iraq. As you've gone around and talked about your book, what has been the reaction of audiences hearing these stories that they're not getting from the mainstream?
It's been a very interesting experience because so many people, even people that have been against the war from the beginning and are in favor of the occupation ending right away, still when they hear some of these detailed graphic stories that I reported on in the book and continue to report on from Iraq, using Iraqi journalists, working with Iraqi journalists over there, it's really, I think, it's hard for people even that are against this to take some of this in of how brutal it is, how dehumanizing it is to Iraqis and U.S. soldiers alike, and that they're still getting information that appalls them. Even now, as we're up on the 5-year anniversary of the war, that people said, yes, so many times I hear this when I give talks, book lectures, that, well, we knew it was bad, but we didn't know it was that bad. And I guess it's not surprising to me because really, it is so awful that until someone goes over there and actually sees it for themselves and see what the Iraqi people are having to live under, that it's just difficult to imagine.
You are working on a new book. Could you tell us a bit about what the concept is and what you envision it being about?
Actually, I got the idea of my next book by going on book tour for this book, Beyond the Green Zone, and I started running into veterans, most of them in Iraq veterans against the war. And, you know, those of us that have been over there, we meet each other and say, oh, where were you, for what dates, and start talking. And that we started doing that, me and some of these veterans, some of them active duty, and they just started telling me stories of things that they did over there that I had never heard, like going out, you know, not believing in the mission, just in survival mode. How do we get home in one piece? How do we not keep killing Iraqis? How do we not getting our soldier buddies killed? How do we not have that continue? And so they told me they started just doing like fake patrols. They called them search and avoid missions, literally taking their Humvees out to the end of a patrol route, parking in a field, smoking cigarettes, drinking soda, listening to music, and pretending while calling in every hour to base saying, yes, we're still searching the field for weapons caches, we'll be back in an hour. And doing that every other day, as I was told. And then meeting other soldiers at different parts of my book tour saying the same thing, and then hearing other different stories of all kinds of different resistance going on in Iraq, whether it be people refusing to go over from here like Aaron Matada, or troops on the ground there calling in sick, doing fake patrols, sabotage, this kind of thing. And I realized that it was pervasive enough and has been going on from almost the very beginning of the occupation and is going on right now today as we speak. And I think it's actually growing. And of course it's something that establishment media is just not reporting on. And so I realized I could and should write a book about this.
I think it's so important. You look at the Vietnam era and a film like Sir No Sir or the book Soldiers in Revolt. That history of the GI resistance during the Vietnam War has been written out of the history books, but it was really instrumental in bringing an end to the war. Do you see a similar possibility today with GI resistance?
I do see the possibility without a doubt, and I think that's one of the silver linings of this whole cloud that we're in right now, this dark cloud of this ongoing occupation and the disaster that this country is in right now. That I think, like in Vietnam, where it was really an integral part that ended the Vietnam War, was a strong, powerful, vibrant GI resistance movement. And I think right now, Iraq Veterans Against the War is really the tip of that, and they're leading it, and they're growing. I mean, the fastest growing segment of their population are active duty troops. They're getting between 10 and 15 new members a week, and I think especially now after the incredible success that this Winter Soldier event has been and as powerful as it's been, that I think that we're on the cusp of a similar type of movement exploding, similar to what happened during Vietnam.
I think another interesting thing about the Vietnam era is that you had Democrats and Republicans who at various phases of that war oversaw the war. We had elections recently expressing the popular opposition and anger about this war that brought in Democratic majority in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, and yet we see the war continuing to be funded. What do you think about the alternatives being presented in terms of the electoral arena right now? Do you think there's a chance to impact that?
Well, it really ties in with what we were just discussing, because I think that if we look at the political landscape in this country, mainstream politics, we have an upcoming presidential election with not one of the leading candidates is talking about immediate total withdrawal and compensation of Iraqis and really helping out veterans back home, the things that Veterans Against the War are so serious about. Those are their 3 key points to try to make happen. And I think that's where they become so much more viable as leaders and as an organization that should be supported, and all veterans part of it, really getting all the support of those in this country that are opposed to the war and the ongoing occupation, where we have clear example after clear example. As you mentioned, the midterms, history will soon repeat itself, most likely with the upcoming presidential election, of just one instance after another of mainstream politics failing the American people and failing what the majority of this people support, which is an end to the occupation, more help for the troops, not spending so much money on the military, getting it more into rebuilding our own infrastructure and helping people back here in healthcare and things like this. And that's not happening. And there's really no one out there that's really, I think, legitimate in saying, yes, I'm going to really represent the American people and help them out. And I think that really leaves the door wide open for, okay, what groups are there that are doing serious work to end this, to force an end to this, because I think it will have to be forced. And that's where, on the playing field, who's left standing at this point? Very, very few groups. And I think the most important one is Iraq Veterans Against the War.
I think what you're saying about IVAW is really important. How can people who are not themselves active duty troops or who are not veterans post-September 11th, which is the period that IVAW uses to define membership, how can we support their work?
Well, there's many ways. I think right now, since we're speaking here at Winter Soldier, and as we all know, there's very limited coverage in the mainstream media. So those of us that already watch Democracy Now! And watch Free Speech TV and read other types of important alternative media, we have watched this event. We're very aware of what these soldiers are saying and what IVAW is saying and what their mission is and how serious they are. And I think one basic thing is go to the IVAW website, ivaw.org. They need help with publicity. They're always needing funds. There's many different ways. You can write them directly and just ask, what can I do to help? But I think for starters, especially as a journalist, is disseminate this information. Write letters to the editor about it. Start writing your own pieces about this, or taking articles that have come out about this event and about Iraq Veterans Against the War and get it out there, because media censorship is for IVAW, one of the biggest obstacles they face, just like all of us, where we have this information. It's hard, solid, truthful information. How do we get it out to people that just simply aren't aware of it? And I think everyone can help play a part in many different ways of getting that information out.
If people want to read your ongoing reporting or find out about your book Beyond the Green Zone or your forthcoming book, where can they go? Do you have a website?
I do have a website. It's dahr.org. We'll get folks there, dahr.org. And I file regular reports from Iraq with the help of my Iraqi colleagues, and presentations on where I'll be giving lectures, and a large link section where folks can find alternative news and foreign news about what's really happening in Iraq.
So that's dahr.org?
Correct.
Well, thanks a lot for being on the show today.
Thank you.